Jeannie's tree better not be a metaphor for cancer in my body. When I started walking after, as suggested by my doctors, some days I couldn't make it down there to their house right at the corner, with the trumpet vines and the azaleas, with the creepers climbing sunward up the trunk of the tall slash pine right outside their chain link fencing. How I wanted to pull it downward, yank its tendrils with one motion, beautiful, fluid, and triumphant. Me, the savior of the poor tree. Me, the one setting its branches free. Fear no more the coming shadows. Fear no more the gale-force storm winds. But the bark and vines were matted. Removing one would take the other. Leave the tree a borer's delight. Leave the tree on naked softwood. So I left it growing skyward. Didn't ask for its forgiveness. That poem is in the new issue of Bear Paw Arts Journal. And I say the new issue, but also it's a brand new journal. So it's the inaugural issue. I will put a link down in the comments so you can check out the other good work. There's an especially good one by Denise Duhamel in there that really got to me about memories and connections and sort of tangential brushes with celebrity. So I hope that you will check that out. It's started by the poet Gwen Hart, and it has a lot of the work has a metrical bent to it, but not necessarily strict formal work. So I feel like folks who are interested in this channel will definitely be interested in checking out Bear Paw Arts Journal. And it's also part of my collection of trying to get journals that have animals in their name. So I was recently in Feral. I will be in Lit Chart coming up. So I like to collect my little menagerie of literary journal titles. And one of the things, I have lots of thoughts and feelings about this particular poem. It is one that I worked on. The original draft was during when I did one of the 30/30 projects with Tupelo Press. So in 2021, not the one I just recently did. It's very different than what was originally, those are like 1 hour drafts. They're not 1 hour drafts. At that time, they were 10 minutes, I think I was giving myself. So very, very quick drafting, 10 or 15, I can't remember which, but it's pretty quick. But yeah, can you see my cat? I'm sorry. Usually I shut her out, don't I? I can't shut her out right now because she's coned and she's already sort of very unhappy, and I don't want to make her even more unhappy by shutting her out of a room. So she's gonna be over there. Hopefully she does not try to, I can just imagine her jumping with the cone on. Hopefully that will not happen for us. It's a hard poem for me to talk about, I think, because when you have had cancer, there is this ever present fear. At least I'm only 4 years out. People tell me that this goes away, but at least for right now, for me, at just a little over year 4, you have this present fear that it will come back. And the fact that one of my oncologists had said to me, it's not a matter of if it comes back, but when. Also, fuck you. Please don't say that to people. If you're an oncologist watching this, like, seriously? You gonna say that to people? We are already scared. We don't need anybody to, we don't need that scared straight stuff. Like, I won't listen to doctor's orders if I'm not worried about it coming back. Right? Like, we're on top of it. We're already worried. You don't need to amp it up for us. Anyway. And I know that, right? Like there's that fear for anyone who's been through it. And so when I had this thought, as I was still going through chemo when I had the thought, and I'm walking past the tree, I had the thought, I was like, no, that's a bad metaphor. Get that metaphor out. You don't need that metaphor. And really, metaphors are hard to control. Poems are hard to control. And that's a interesting thing about the revision process too. That my initial impulse, so just thinking about poetic creation, my original impulse with the poem, walking by the tree, was this vine is a metaphor for cancer in my body. Worried that the two are interlocked. And what also ends up happening to the tree that doesn't end up in the poem is they cut the tree down not long after that. Because in Florida, you know, we get hurricanes, and if you've got a lot of tall pine trees, so slash pines are native to, like, and loblolly pines, they're native to Florida, but they're more native to sandier areas. And people planted them in areas that have more clay. And they don't like that. So their roots are a little shallower. They get to a certain point and hurricanes topple them, crushing houses. So the tree came down not long after the impetus for the poem and after the poem was written. So there's that too. So if I really, original impetus for the poem, if I want to go with it, would be the vine is like cancer. It is matted into my body. There's no way to separate the two. And then the tree comes down in the end, which would be me not being here. Don't like that, right? You know, Muses, take that one back. Thanks for the offer. No thanks. Is it rude to refuse the Muses offer? To say thank you for that metaphor, but no thank you? Which is essentially then what I did with the poem. That I wrote the poem as it came to me, but then titled it, "This better not be, I don't want this," right? So took the poem as it was given, but made a title that was sort of my mental part chiming in like, but in the revision process, other people get involved too. I tend to not workshop or anything, but if an editor makes a comment about this could be more interesting, or this is more what I'd like to see in a poem, if an editor is interested in publishing it, I will roll with that. Does that make me, what does that make me as a poet? If an editor makes a suggestion, do you go with it? Do you not go with it? Put stuff down in the comments. If you're a writer and you've experienced that, what do you think about that? If you're an editor, put that down there. I know when I was a poetry editor for Southeast Review, I had made some editorial comments for somebody and they absolutely didn't take them. And they were very adamant about not taking them. And I was just like, whatever, okay, fine. And that person is actually doing very, very well with their poetry. But with that particular poem, I feel I was right. But in general, they are a stellar poet. And I love their work. So is it the individual poem? Is it the poet? Oh, Muses. It's you're heavy. Heavy work there, Muses. So the point of that is that the editor, who is a wonderful poet who I respect a lot, suggested my original last two lines of this poem were, "So I left it growing skyward, and I asked for its forgiveness," which is a very me sort of thing, right? I'm sort of, am I riddled with guilt? That makes me sound a little bit more neurotic than I am. I've had a lot of EMDR. I am significantly less riddled with guilt and loathing than I used to be. But that's very much my personality showing through with, and I asked for its forgiveness. And she said, hey, how about this? And suggested the didn't ask for its forgiveness, which is the exact opposite of my original intent. And for me, I feel like I'm just very roll with it. and there are certain things that I wouldn't have. Like the title, I probably wouldn't have budged on the title. But the ending, let's roll with it. I think about W.H. Auden and his poem September 1st, 1939. So as World War II is kicking, he has a line that's famous, or a set of lines, whatever, some lines. We must love one another or die. What lines. We must love one another or die. World is kicking up for some wars, and Auden's out there saying, we're going to get through this through our connection to each other. We must love one another or die. Except Auden's original lines were, we must love one another and die. Right? Totally different vibe. His edits were based on other people's suggestions. They were not his original intent. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Well, he probably wasn't that blasé or whatever. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Another big change within a poem. And so I think about that. There's also, I can't remember who, if it was Milton or Donne. There's somebody else that had another, I think it was Donne. It was another big change like that, where it's a completely different meaning to the poem. It's like a 180. So I think about that. I'm like, yeah, I can roll with that. I can accept that the muses can speak through the editors as well as speaking through me, right? I don't really vibe with the muses in general. I do sort of, before I write, I often will do an invocation and call the corners to sort of bring all the elements of the world in and see what comes out. But I can vibe with that. An editor's got that going on as well. And I think it did definitely make for the poem to be more a conventionally good poem. And that's another thing that I think about often with my work of late is, do I want them to be conventionally good poems, or do I want them to be me? Ooh, that's a heavy one. I think a lot of poets think about that. I think if there's a poet who says that they've never thought about that, they're either I'm gonna riff on and tweak Theodore Ruthke a little bit, that if a poet says that they've never thought about the difference between aesthetics and their own heart or own what they gravitate towards, the person is either lying or completely non-self-reflective. Ruthke's quote is a lot punchier. Then he says that if a poet says they don't care what people think about their work, that person is either a liar or an asshole. Like, you go, Ruthke. So yeah, I think that is something that I continue to think about a lot. And I think about that with this particular poem. When if I put it into a collection, will I change that line back? I don't know. I mean, I like it that way from a poetic standpoint. Like, as a person reading a poem, I'm like, dang, yeah, Gwen was right. That line lands, yeah. But as a me looking at, is this communicating my meanness? It doesn't. Which is more important? I don't have an answer to that. And so that feels like a good place to stop for me. Thanks for stopping by.